Good morning. I would like to call the meeting to order. In the room, we have Grace Robertson, Sean Clarence, Peter Stalker, Kip Robertson. And on Zoom, we have Nina Lenz and Dale Barber. I would take a motion to approve the March agenda. So, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the first agenda item is the approval of minutes of February 17th. As I think they've been amended in the last day or so. As everybody, and then also the February 28th special board meeting. I would move to approve the minutes from February 17th, 2022 regular board meeting and the February 28th, 2022 special board meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any comments or questions or changes?
Yes.
Grace?
I'm going to do it at the right point in time this time. Which ones were updated? Was the special meeting or the board meeting? I'm sorry, I kind of lost track.
The regular.
The regular board meeting.
That was updated.
Just changed.
It was just changed a couple of,
Peter from president to chair.
Nothing significant.
nothing significant.
Thank you. That's all I need.
So all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Public comment. Is anybody who is listening in wish to raise their hand and make a comment? I don't see any. So we will move forward. Correspondence report, we had no correspondence. So we must be either doing something right or we're not, or we're not doing things too many things wrong. So far. The next agenda item is strategic planning, and Brian Green from the Wyoming State Library is here to talk to us a little bit about what the state is doing with their rapid results strategic planning, which was formerly called Framing the Future. Brian, the floor is all yours. We'll let you speak in just 1 second. So you need to unmute.
There he is.
There you go. Super.
Good morning, Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, Kip, and good morning, Teton County Library Board. It's great to see one particular familiar face there, Dale Barber. We did a lot of work earlier on when I was with the Wild Network here at the State Library. Matter of fact, this month marks 30 years that I've been with the Wyoming State Library. 18 years of those were and by the way, before I continue, Jamie Marcus, State Librarian, wanted me to convey his best to all of you and hope you're having a great day, and also wishes you success in the strategic planning process that you're going to be embarking upon. I've been here, as I said, 30 years. I'm in this current position for 6 years. I was headed up the Wild support team for about 18 years. And we've gone through 2 strategic plans with Wild. We've gone through 3 strategic plans with the State Library. So I have some experience as well as some of you, I'm sure, in where you are currently or what you have done previously in the past. The other thing I'd like to just do a quick brag today, the State Library posted on its blog that our library trustee handbook made the top 10 of a consultant who works with library boards in Canada and the United States. He went through the 50 states and 10 provinces of Canada to pick his top 10. So we feel a little bit proud to have that. And we posted a little article about that today. About the rapid results planning. This started actually in 2016. Montana State Library contacted Jamie Marcus about us joining a coalition of Western states to kind of do this thing with a consulting company called Library Strategies. And that was Arizona, North and South Dakota, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. I think I named all 6. And those are the states currently involved in the process now. But it took a while in the beginning because obviously Montana was recruiting states to be involved. Then they wrote an IMLS grant, that's the Institute of Museum and Library Services grant, to do this work with library strategies on the behalf of the 6 states that were interested. And it took a while to get that going, and lo and behold, we got granted over $200,000 to make this happen. And then COVID hit. We've all used that expression one way or another, and probably use it for something else. That delayed our process, it delayed our training. We did a lot of our work via Zoom and prepping for this. And there was a strong EDI SJ component in the beginning of that too. Because one of the key things, and I might as well give them to you now, that that the rapid results planning is all about is number one, it's cost effective. Number two, it's relatively short in duration. Their goal is to have us do this in 4 to 6 months. It focuses heavily on community needs, and obviously an EDI SJ component is very important to that, as we want to be sensitive to community needs and all of those, and in particular, the underserved. It emphasizes big picture strategic directions and visions for the library, and it culminates in a tactical implementation plan for the library staff. And that's usually done in about the last month after we've done that. One of the major events that will happen, and I'm happy to, Kip is probably already going to be talking about this or has. It's great to see that the planning team that has been put together at Teton County, and they're going to be engaged in a lot of work, and particularly right now, a community profile. You already do that and are familiar with your community. This gets into the more specific stuff, some demographics and the ethnic makeup, the background. You have that, but again, it's good to have that, particularly for those of us who are going to be helping you facilitate the process, to kind of understand what do we learn from that. And again, one of the things we want to look for, who are the underserved, and what are you doing for the underserved, and do we need to improve services in that area? But obviously there's other services you do and provide, and all this community profile of information, that's sometimes even meaning getting information from other groups who have done community profiles, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, and other entities in the community that you can draw information and data from that can help make us have a full and complete picture of what Teton County does and who they have and how you want to provide services to those that you serve. I think I'm going to wrap up here real quickly. So essentially, we have a team that went to a training in the beginning of this month in Billings, Montana. We have 4 Wyoming people. 3 of them are directors, and 1 is myself. Teton County Library Director, obviously Kip knows them very well. Richard Landreth in Lincoln County, Lisa Scroggins in Natrona County, and Terry Leslie in Campbell County. Those are the teams. So we have 3 people with director experiences who have gone through strategic planning processes and who have now been indoctrinated, so to speak, in this RR, rapid results planning process too. Doesn't mean we're experts. We're like you, we have some experience. But together as a team, I think we can do some really good things. And I know we will do really good things. And hopefully you'll be proud of the effort that we make, and hopefully 4 to 6 months. And with that, I think I'll stop, see if there's any questions, and go from there.
Does anybody have a question for Brian? Grace?
Of course.
It's okay. That's great.
Surprise, surprise. Hi, Brian. I'm Grace Robertson. You have a $200,000 grant. Does that grant have metrics that are going to be, are you obliged to measure and do certain things out of that grant? And if so, could we be aware of those up front so we know what's driving you from the grant perspective? Or is that insignificant? Did they give you $200,000 and say you don't need to report back?
No, it doesn't work that way with the IMLS. No, there's very much a lot of accountabilities involved. And the one thing I'm happy about at the Wyoming State Library is most of that responsibility is going to be with the Montana State Library, since they were the host. They were the ones who coordinated the effort. They're the ones that actually wrote the grant. They're the ones that can report back to that. So metrics are going to be including obviously these states. Right now, the metrics are more about the preparation and the training that we've gone through. We've been assigned essentially our responsibilities and obligations for each one of us individually is to do at least be involved with 2 libraries in a strategic planning process. The Montana State Library gets the fun part about doing the reimbursement part of the process. So a lot of that, the money is actually for doing the training and preparation, and then actually for us making the visits when we actually make visits to you. Because, excuse me, to step aside for a moment here, one of the major things that this does is the steering committee will work with you doing what they call a community retreat. That is a one-day gathering of your key stakeholders, a very representative group in Teton County to come together on that particular day, and where we will look at work as a group in the morning and work in small groups in the afternoon. And by the end of the day, basically everything we need to kind of write a strategic plan from there with our major goals in place. Obviously, there's homework to do up to that, but that's where the key community input opportunity will come for them. And hopefully we will even consider doing maybe a survey before that will help lead us up to that. So a lot of the funding for those things going on in the 6 states with all the libraries that are going to be worked with, a lot of the funding is going to go towards supporting the travel to go to those libraries to do that particular item and to provide some of the necessary things we need to do that.
Okay.
So metrics, I would have, it would be a little more helpful to me from how you would want me to, I would have to go to the Montana State Library to ask them a little bit more about how they're going to handle that side of it.
But it sounds like that's not going to be a significant driver in your activities. So, and is there any schedule in the grant? Is there any obligation to show results within a period of time? What is that?
By the end of this calendar year, we hope to have all done. And then again, Montana State Library will be seeking input from us, and we're going to provide them data, and they're going to do the final report that will go to the IMLS.
More?
And actually, when we get done too with our community retreat and strategic plan, we will also be doing an evaluation with at least through the steering committee also, and that will provide some metrics that we'll be passing on to Montana when they do their summative report for IMLS.
One last question.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I have more, but I'm going to stop it.
This is good.
Do we get any benefit from knowledge and similar demographics to the 5 states that are involved here? Will there be information from Colorado, from Montana, resort communities, and will that be part of this process built in? Or is it sequential? Are you working with those other libraries sequentially so that we won't have that data?
That's a good question, because I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to explain.
Well, that's a good question, because it allows me to also explain a different part of the process, which was how in Wyoming did we come up with the 8 libraries that we're going to be working with. And essentially each state is doing an invitation to its public library community to see which of them might be interested in doing the strategic planning process. So it was a volunteer thing essentially. And when I sent out a message to the Wyoming library directors, Kip was one of the first ones to respond. That was right after he came on board as your director. And so the interest was expressed there. And like I said, I don't know if I can, I may have a list of all 8 counties here. So it's really going to be hard to get back to your question to know if we have a similar county profile in one of the other 6 states that is closer to you, where you can do some valid comparison. And that's a great idea to do that. So I think one of the things we need to do as a takeaway for me today and for the Wyoming cohort that's going to be involved in this process is to become aware of what libraries in each of those 6 states are being involved in the process. And then we can look at comparisons down the road. And that probably would be after we complete the strategic planning process. Does that make sense, or sound like a good plan?
Forum is an ideal place to do that, and it would be helpful, is mine. Thank you, that's all.
So noted, thank you.
Dale, do you have any questions, or Nina?
I'm good.
I have one, which is, it's really addressed to Kip, but while you're on the line, Brian, which is, I think this is fantastic for us. I am a little fuzzy as to how we are going to integrate the granularity of the strategic plan for this library as part of this overall effort, because, you know, I don't quite see that quite yet. So do you have an idea of how the process would work yet?
Brian and I haven't really talked about process yet. And that it was something I had hoped we might be able to address here so we could hear that too. And I don't know if that's something you can do in a couple of minutes, Brian.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think the key thing is that the RRP, the Rapid Results Planning Process, is a trademark model and process. And what we're going to be doing with that is applying it to all 8 county libraries in Wyoming that are interested in this process. So it's going to be obviously unique to each county library, because obviously the community profiles are going to be different for each county. But the process, that is getting a steering committee together, developing a community profile, maybe doing a survey or focus groups with certain key members of the community and the county, as well as this community retreat, and then this implementation plan, are all steps are going to be applied in all 6 or all 8 county libraries, if that helps.
It does. One of the things that I think we may find, since the library has been very out front in trying to really involve our community, and the nature of this community being people coming in and out a lot, we may need a few more of those community-wide meetings that are in addition to what is going to be done. But I presume that the process allows us to tailor a little bit to the unique needs of what we might find here.
We actually, the product isn't the product actually our strategic plan?
Yes.
Yes,
It's
yes,
our plan.
yes. But if we only have a one-day community, all-day, meeting with subgroups, that may leave out a lot of our segment of the population that might not be here for that day. And
Yeah,
I
we're
think
going to have
we're
to.
trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Got it.
So, and that we can address some
And I
of
think
the.
Brian has said that
Yeah.
that's possible.
Yeah,
right?
Ryan, I understand. I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to put a couple underlines on it. So,
Yeah, the bottom line is that we're going to basically, the steering committee there in Teton County will be hopefully developing a list, 50 to 60 people, maybe 75 people, because you want to start with a larger list, because not all are going to probably be able to make it, and narrow, and then hopefully have at least 30 to 40 people who can be involved in doing this community retreat. And you're right, there is the possibility that you may determine, the steering committee may determine that it needs more community input. Then obviously we will go ahead and do that. So the nice thing about this, it is flexible. And it's not a cookie cutter approach. So yes, so the steering committee will certainly be keeping you up to date. And I know we'll make the best decisions we can together as a group on the behalf of Teton County.
Ryan, thank you very much. I know you have a 9 o'clock cutoff, so I will let you, if there are any other questions for Brian, I'll go say thank you. We'll look forward to continue to work with you.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to work with all of you. And hopefully we'll be back and having good things to report in the near future. All right. Have a great
Thank you,
day.
Brian. I'll talk to you later
Brian.
today.
Okay.
I
moving-
have one
oh,
quick question.
sorry,
It's
Chris.
really burning. Maybe Kip, I didn't want to hold him up. But he described an RFP process that he's going out to every library to set up the agreement between Wyoming State Library and us for this process. Is that right? That's what I thought I heard. He said an RFP process for each of the county libraries that want to participate.
I didn't hear that. I heard that the RFP was
For the grant.
for the
itself.
grant, for all of 5 states, 5 states. Not
Oh,
for-
it wasn't by county?
No, it wasn't by county.
I don't think that, yeah.
Is that what it was? Okay.
That's what I-
I thought
That's
it
what I
sounded like a
heard.
pretty good idea.
Well, we had, and so far we had Lincoln, if I'm doing this correctly, we had Lincoln, Teton County, Natrona, and Campbell as 4 of the 8 libraries that are going to be involved in Wyoming.
No, those other 3 libraries are where the trainers are coming from. They've already gone through
But
this.
presumably it's those 4 library systems plus 4 more from there. He said he's talking about having it.
I think the other three libraries have already gone through this process for their strategic planning. Is what I would have understood.
There's a lot, and we just sort of shifted from our other, the ALA.
Well, that's the question. Are we
Well,
comfortable in shifting from the PLA handbook to this process?
I for one am, because anytime we can get the state involved and be more integrated, this multi-state effort seems like a wonderful idea. So as long as we can get, this is a living and breathing document, and if we find out that Telluride or Bozeman, wherever a resort Intermountain has done something after we've concluded, we can learn from that. Or I think that would be very helpful.
I am in favor of it, and I like the fact that it's going to get us going and moving, and we're going to get through this and get it behind us. We need to do that. And so it's going to give us impetus. I like its expertise that it's bringing in, and certainly more expert than what we could do. My concerns, and they're probably not showstoppers, but my concern, first concern is resources. With that kind of a schedule, it is going to demand your resources, step up to it. And I hope you've got that much bandwidth within the organization and resource availability to do that, because that's a very aggressive schedule.
I think we'll have to, as we have our first meeting and figure out what the process is going to look like, we'll have to prioritize.
You think
But
that
I
the
think some
capability
things may
is
have to
within your
just-
resources to pick up this?
I
I mean, it's bigger than anything I've seen in 3 years at the library, so.
But Kip, you're anticipating that the staff that you've identified to participate will continue on in this role.
They will have a
Part of our strategic planning committee has sort of set up. Dale, are you comfortable with how we're going forward?
Yes, I am. I think it's a good thing to collaborate as much as possible.
Nina, everything okay with you as well?
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not in charge. So thank you to those who have taken the lead.
All right. Terrific. Are there any other questions on the strategic plan?
I will just say that we do have a meeting scheduled with this planning committee and most all of the trainers and Brian. April 5th at 3 o'clock.
Here.
Zoom and Learning Lab.
Perfect. All right, moving on. We have the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull something from the consent agenda? Dale?
I have questions about the financials and the final budget submission.
All right, does anybody want to pull something in addition to that? All right, Dale, please.
I know we are in the process of still coordinating with the county as we have changed the way we're doing it, but I found this paperwork that was provided in our packet this time not to be very helpful in terms of the financials. There are no comparisons. It doesn't seem to address anything but the bills that it's dealing with in that particular period of time. And I do remember in our last meeting that there was mention that there was going to be an attempt to translate some of this information into the format closer to what we had been using, which did include, comparisons, how much has been spent to date, that sort of thing. I'm just wondering if that just didn't happen this time, or what's going on with that?
I think, Dale, you're bringing up a very good point, which is this is probably our primary responsibility as a board is the financial oversight. And it's been very complicated. I think I'd like Kip and then Stella or one of the two of you, or both of you to address this, please. We just talked about this just before
Yes.
as we're coming to the room.
You have described the document is certainly lacking, Dale. The document is, those two documents that you have seen are used to reconcile our QuickBooks accounts. That has mostly been done. However, the information is still in Teton Accounting's hands and have not produced the final documents again. Stella and I talked last night, Peter and I talked this morning, that we need to find a process that gets this wrapped up sooner than it has been in the last 2 months. I think we may have to just make a cutoff of when vouchers and such are completed. We may have vouchers that just don't get paid for an extra month at this point, but in the absence of an administrative assistant, we're going to have to, start a week earlier so that we can work on the QuickBooks and get the reports generated, because it is your primary responsibility.
Is the timing from the county in terms of what they give us before then we can take it back and put it into our QuickBooks? Is that an issue, or is it really
That may be
the
still
Torrent,
a-
or is it really the Torrent end or both?
So Torrent has not been involved in the county component.
Right.
And so the additional documents you have, and yes, Dale, I will make sure for sure that you all receive some sort of spreadsheet. I've created a spreadsheet that maps out like our accounts that you're typically used to seeing in QuickBooks to the county accounts. So that's one thing aside, so that when you see these expenditure and revenue reports, you know what that's correlating to in terms of what you're used to seeing in our accounts. So, so that's one thing. But Torrent, so this was the first month that we actually had the expenditure report from the county, because last month was the first month where they actually produced our checks. But Torrent was not involved in that process. So like I actually went into QuickBooks and marked checks as paid from the expenditure report, which is what the process will be going forward. So Torrent was not involved in that aspect. As you know, they had told us that kind of December would be the last month they could help us. Fortunately, they've been able to help out with our accounting in January, and also were going to help us with this month. But I think just the timing also of some of the documents getting produced, and also Torrent being in tax season, I'm assuming is also what unfortunately kept them from producing the P&Ls and so forth. So it's a kind of a little bit of mix, but I would say that with the county documents, they're not generated on the first of the month, but I think they're generated early enough that hopefully that won't prevent us from being able to get these documents to you at your board meetings in the future. So in terms of that aspect.
So can we, as soon as you have this February's reconciled, you send that out to us, please?
Yes.
And then are you anticipating in April, March's will be able to be done in time for the report? Because I know there's been a learning curve on QuickBooks for you and anybody who you've tapped in to help you. Are you feeling, is that going better now?
It is, and I'm also learning the voucher process and trying to tweak a few things there to kind of speed that along. So
Short of an administrative assistant who has QuickBooks knowledge to help, is there anything that the board can do to help out in this situation?
I don't think so, but I thank you all. But I think it really is just internally getting my process speeded up.
Once we sort of get the process figured out, would the board want an overall training, of just what everything is, and rather than just throwing it at you?
I guess if we're gonna get this material in the next week or so, let us take a look at that. And if we feel like it would be useful to have some guidance,
Okay.
we will save some time. to
The
do that.
county documents are a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, I think it's gonna be very helpful as we roll forward to have a well thought through orientation session on financials when it's smoothly implemented. And
Yes.
it may take a couple of months to do that, but we're gonna obviously have new board members coming in at some point in time. And I don't know, as part of the orientation, it's gonna be very helpful. Dale, are you happy with this, or we're
You know,
all?
I'm having some difficulty hearing you guys. I don't know if it's just my computer or what, but I'm not personally comfortable at this point in terms of approving these financial documents, because I can't honestly say that I really understand what's going on to the degree that I feel I should be in order to go forward with these. And I think, Peter, you said, let's get the February ones in a better format, as well as the March ones, hopefully before the next meeting. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Well, what I actually said was, let's get the February numbers to us in the format that we can look at them in the next week or so, if that's a reasonable time frame. It sounds like it is. And then at the, I think we might have to have a special meeting to approve those February numbers sometime before the April meeting. And in April, everything should be back on track to have a regular reporting. I agree with you. We can't vote on approving the February financials without, in this format. Is that, I'm sorry, Grace.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I have one more request. When you put that package together, if you would, we asked in the last meeting that you tell us year-to-date anticipated expenditures against the budget that we're submitting, and I'd really like to have, so if you could include that in the package. Sure. You gave us the increase over budget, but now we'd like the increase beyond what your forecast is for this year.
Dale, so is that all right? That's at least what I'm suggesting. Is that something that's agreeable to you?
I think that's the right way to go.
So Dale, you also had a question about the budget submission for fiscal year 23.
Yes, and I know we all share this concern about the salaries, and I'm sure the county does too, because everyone is struggling to such a degree. And when I'm looking at the workforce plan on the budget submission, I realized I had not inquired about, I know the county is, the commission is going to consider another increase over and above our submitted budget for the county as a whole. And Kip, do you know that that's going to also include part-time salaries?
If I can only answer the question in the last round, it did include the part-timers, but they were included after the fact. But
You're talking
that
about
was
a year ago.
because
You're talking about a year ago or this last
This
year?
past.
This past year.
They were not included in the study with the consultant. They have since been adjusted. So I would think yes, but I would have to inquire to make sure.
And when are they sitting down for the, it was supposed to be next week, is it not? Or is it this week that they're talking about? Today? When are the budget discussions for all the departments?
Oh, they started April.
April,
May.
okay.
I will get an answer for you Dale. Because I don't want to make the assumption that, yes, the part-timers are included, but
Okay, that'd be good. And
have been included in the process. just
yes.
not-
And of course, if there's anything any of us or the library board as a whole can do to encourage the county to, you know, take a really good hard look at all of this, I certainly feel that I'd be willing to do it. And Peter, I know you have emphasized that in our meetings with the commission, which I think it's really important that we continue to do that.
Are there any other questions that you have on the financials, Dale?
No, not at this time.
I would like to pull then, we have a staff report on the Pharonic software renewal, and we have to approve that contract because it is over $5,000. Is that a contract approval later in the agenda, or is that?
Well, we put it here because we don't really, you've approved this in the past, and we
Right.
don't know if neither Stella or I were here when those were approved. It was approved before, so we don't know if you approved all future renewals of it, or if.
Traditionally, if it's a renewal and or a new contract, it has come up to the board for approval. As long as it's over that $5,000 threshold.
Okay.
That certainly is how I would feel comfortable going forward. Because I don't want to, because I don't want to commit a future board. I can't on this type of things. So you need a motion.
We do need a motion then.
So I'm.
Isn't it a motion when it's part of the
It
consent?
is part of
agenda?
It is, but so I'm going to take a motion to approve the consent agenda X, the February financials. Do I have a second? I have a second from Sean. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All in favor to approve the consent agenda except for the February financials? All in favor, aye. Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on, director's report. It's the strategic plan recap, the advertisement and the press release, which by the way, I love the advert. That was
Right.
great.
Diana did a great job.
It was fantastic.
And it should start showing up in the paper.
Speak up just a little bit. I'm even kind of.
It should be in the papers very soon.
I believe we're going to run it for 3 Wednesdays, I believe, and then a couple times in the daily, just so that some folks who don't read the weekly or vice versa, that hopefully will hit everybody getting to see it.
Well done. It was great.
The only big highlight again in my report would be the hiring update. We are in continuous recruitment for the part-time staff. We just brought somebody on who's now landed her dream job, so she's leaving us.
What's her dream job?
What is your
I don't know. Stephanie did not tell us what it was.
No, I read that and I was like, well, I want to know what that is because the library is supposed to be your dream job. So I wonder what that
It's a part-time job at the library, isn't.
well,
I don't know. For some people.
The senior library assistant, we have filled one of them with an internal promotion, which was very exciting to be able to do that. She will start sometime in April into that new role. And as Peter just mentioned, yes, we were ghosted on the administrative assistant position. We made an offer and it's never even considered or
that's too bad.
rejected or anything. So that's the world we live in. We read about them all the time, about that happening. So we're back at open recruitment, hoping somebody will apply. So we make that clear again to the public if anybody's watching. And the IT tech position, we did conduct interviews a couple weeks ago now, and the job offer is being extended. The person was interviewed for both the county position and the library position. So we are giving the candidate the option of choosing which department they would like to work in. Person is more suited to the library, we felt. So we'll see if that's what the person chooses.
It can't be a financial decision at that point in time, is it?
No,
It's the same
pay.
category.
So we will see what happens there. The agreement has been that the person would be shared between the two departments.
Are we
Until
offering-
which
Are we
time
offering cookies at lunch or something? We can-
the foundation, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah.
Could move somebody.
She has access to all the free books.
Yeah,
Nothing.
no late
I think
fees.
everybody,
No late
I
fees.
think everybody gets that.
Yeah, but
Nothing.
it's
You
a-
don't have to point those things out, Kip.
We'll try. So that's where we are. That's the highlight. Everything else we kind of talked about.
I want to thank you and all of your staff for what has been a incredibly full 5 weeks, 6 weeks, this last, well, since this year, but it's continuing. And you all are doing a great aplomb. So thank you so much on that.
Thank you.
Any questions for Kip on his report? Okay, thank you. That's what we have, the foundation report. Do you want, you can just do it right there.
Great, I'm comfortable here, that's perfect.
Thank you.
So you all received a copy of our report, and that's the brief outline, just a couple things that are notable to share. We just met with all of our committee members yesterday and gone over a few things. The board does have a number of vacancies, about 3 vacancies coming up at the end of this term. And so we are in the process of vetting potential candidates to fill those vacancies. And of course, welcome any and all suggestions. If you all, have some folks that you think would serve the foundation well, we welcome your suggestions. But that is what's currently ongoing. You saw that we have our draft 990 completed, and so we anticipate a filing of that coming shortly. And we did, I believe your ad ran in yesterday's paper in the news and guide. So that was wonderful, and we were excited to see. We got a sneak preview before it actually ran from Diana, and we thought it was fantastic as well. And I think it's appropriate to share how our annual report is going on. We have this is just a piece together fun mock-up that we've done of our draft. Our draft is about 90% complete. And just love to share with you just briefly what our objective is with our annual report. We thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to speak directly to our donors. And so in our report, we're just kind of sharing our purpose as a foundation, how we act as an independent, structurally independent organization from the county library board, but also how our work is fundamentally intertwined and how we do work together. We're featuring, first and foremost, all of the programs that the foundation supports. And in speaking of those programs, we're talking about what's new in 2021. We've done a profile on Kip as the new director that came on board in 2021. We're featuring the youth programs, and then we have our adult programs. This is a marker to hold space for that. Just some of the fun statistics about the library, our annual event, our benefit, featuring that, thanking our sponsors, a feature on the Friends so that folks can understand how we partner with the Friends to support the library. And then of course, our list of donors and gratitude to all of them for their support. And then in the back, we've created a call to action where we ask folks who have this to, if you're considering ways to support the library, you can consider donating, volunteering, engaging by signing up for your newsletter or sponsoring our event. And so that is the sum total of how we're excited to communicate with them this year. One of the keys that we talked about at our committee meetings yesterday was how we can work together to get that message to our donors in a nice, robust manner. So in meeting with the spenders or the program managers recently, after we received your budget request for the new upcoming fiscal year, we talked to them about the importance of having these impact stories to share. I think there was a consensus yesterday in our meetings that while the data is fun to look at the numbers, it's more important to have that emotional aspect, that emotional tie, and saying, who's benefiting and why and how and what is their story. And that's what we hope to start planning for the coming year to collect that data for next year. And we've been in the process of meeting with your program managers and them sharing with us a few of these stories for the previous year, and it's been really fun and enlightening, and that's what we hope to accomplish for next year. In looking at your draft budget, we provided for our committee yesterday just a brief outline, and we listed all of the programs and services that you're including in your draft, and we underlined anything that's new coming up for the new fiscal year. So that was our process yesterday as an introduction to the budget request. And so again, the consensus was, let's go back and talk to the program managers about these programs. And these are some of the key focuses we would like to have about this. So we want to talk about just going over the new programs, identifying the needs, identifying, and this relates back to this document we created, I guess, with your assistance as well, on how we can have this conversation. So identifying needs, the goal of the program, who specifically benefits and why, and so who are we trying to serve, and then of course the importance of this project. So there is, and we're really kind of directing this at all of the new projects, because of course your existing programs and services have proven effective and a benefit to the community. So looking at the new items, that's what we'd like to talk about going forward. And then let's see, one more item. Yes.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Please.
What's the dollar amount on?
Oh, that's a great, we didn't, excuse me, we didn't identify specifically pulling out the exact dollar amount on the, but we can do that for you. But we do have a total sum of almost 100,000 more than the previous year, which was encouraging, yes.
No, that's great. So that's super. But it's about $100,000. I know some of the programs, the traditional programs have grown a little bit.
Correct.
It'd be great to find out what the dollar amounts are, because we're tracking whether these new programs are successful, as opposed to the ones that have been in place for a while. So I think that'd be great.
That is a great question, and we'll do that. We'll go ahead and go through your budget and extract the dollar amounts that's attached to the new programs.
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt.
No, absolutely. Please, any questions? We welcome your questions. And so, yes.
I have a quick
Yes,
question.
Grace.
And this probably isn't appropriate for this meeting, but we can at least start it. We have been trying to get our arms around the size of FIDA in the library and in the foundation. And I'm wondering if you should be considering doing it a little bit more like the process that you're using for the other programs. Not in that process right now. So I'd just like to.
To evaluate, are you saying to evaluate the service, the VITA service in that same manner? Is that what you're suggesting?
Sounds like you're doing sort of a proposal grant process,
Correct.
work statement, and then tracking the amount. This program is, somewhere between $37,000 to $50,000 of library time. And then the foundation contributes additional funds to the program. And we're kind of in this never, never land. And I just would like you to consider, I think it's a big enough picture and important enough to the community to have it be part of that process instead of hanging out there by itself. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I believe that sums up, also wanted to thank you all for, because since we're not including volunteers in our annual report, the way it's drafted, it was wonderful to see the library step forward and create that ad that recently ran in the volunteer excerpt. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, any other questions?
Dale, do you have questions for Diana?
No, thank you.
Nina? I have two.
Yes.
How are you planning on distributing your wonderful report?
Thank you. So the plan right now is to mail that report to all of the donors in our database. We're looking at approximately 500 recipients of that. Also to our benefit sponsors and some of our key partners. And there was a suggestion that we reach out to even people that currently aren't in our database, that we would consider potential supporters of the foundation and library. So
Have you looked at what the cost to drop mail to the county?
we have not.
Would you look at that and it's just a suggestion, and if it's not prohibited, I think it's again, reaching people you might not reach.
Correct.
And I just don't know whether it's prohibited. My second question is, you have 3 vacancies. Are there any, if you could circulate any particular needs that you have to the board would be very helpful in our trying to help you think through candidates.
Absolutely. And in fact, one that was repeatedly mentioned yesterday was, as we are forecasting to potentially lose a board member who's heavily versed in financials, maybe that would be, I would identify that as probably one of our needs going forward. It's not an immediate need because we're looking at that vacancy potentially at the end of the year and perhaps even be able to extend that person's term. So that's just potentially coming down the road. That's what we see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. I don't see anybody on from the Friends, but we have a report from Lori Clark Erickson, and I think it's pretty self-evident. Move on. Everybody moving forward. Okay, we have the next item is the board bylaws amendment. Last month, I brought a suggestion that we move toward a system where we amend our bylaws to allow us a lot more flexibility given our workload, our time schedules in terms of potential new board members, and flexibility for heavy years versus non-heavy years, excuse me for the expression, in terms of work product. And out of that, you see before you a proposal to amend our bylaws to move to a situation where at the first meeting in our fiscal year, we would set our board meetings for the upcoming fiscal year by resolution, both the date, time, and number. In addition, those are for the regular board meetings, and we're putting this as a minimum of 6, but no maximum, because we might have a year where we have lots of meetings. And the default, if we don't agree, is to have schedule as currently set, which is 12 meetings a year, the third Thursday of the month, 8:30 in the morning. That's the default if we don't have a resolution and agreement. We will, in addition to this, have monthly voucher meetings, although the process has gotten very much easier in terms of with the counties handling all of our payables, but we will have to have a voucher meeting once a month. So before you is the amendment. I would in order to discuss it, I guess we have to, I will take a motion to approve the amending of our bylaws as laid out in the amendment. No motion. No motion.
No motion.
Abigail,
Open it.
we just opened it for discussion. Okay, terrific. I'm going to open it for discussion. Is there any discussion? Hold on a second, Grace.
Okay, that's fine.
Dale, Nina,
Who made the motion? I couldn't hear.
isn't a motion actually.
Oh, you don't have a motion yet?
But we presented it last meeting. We have the amendment before us. We're discussing the amendment, and it would be
The vote meeting.
the vote would be in April.
Oh,
subject
right.
to the
Okay.
day review. Glad we have our esteemed council here to keep me in line. So for those on Zoom, which are Dale and Nina, do you have any discussion? Do you have any questions or comments on this?
No.
Grace?
Thank you. When we originally talked about this, a big portion of our impetus to do it was efficiency, the fact that having every 4 weeks having a meeting and the workload it posed to the library and the board. And that efficiency of use of time when it didn't make sense to have that frequent. I don't think this captures that as a reason clearly enough. And I think it would be good to have our records show that that was part of the reason we're doing it. So it says, offers more flexibility to accommodate individuals with differing schedules while maintaining predictability. I'm wondering if we couldn't add something about enables efficient. I'm not sure what words it is.
Flexibility to allow the board and
To allow efficient use of time.
time operation. Well,
I know it's a minor point, but it's good to have that in the records, that
Does
this
that
is a
mean we
more
have to have
efficient
a-
more efficient use of resources. There.
Would we have to have a second 30-day clock?
Oh,
You know, you might, and I think if you want that in the record, if you put it in your minutes, and we can even put it in the motion where you vote on this in April, so we can include some of the findings if you want more than what's already here in the motion. You don't need a motion today. Under your bylaws, to amend your bylaws, all you have to do is have whatever the bylaw draft is presented to you today. And then it has to sit for 30 days for you all to think of things. And it's probably a minor enough change that we can include that when you vote on it. Especially if you guys
Do we have a
perhaps.
preamble that isn't part of the bylaws? I think that just has a,
Well, I mean, that's the purpose of the recitals is
The recitals,
basically is a preamble. But I think it could be acceptable if we want to add a little bit of language. It's probably a good idea to decide on that exact language today. So even though we don't have a piece of paper with it, it's been decided upon, and then 30 days with this language and any changes is in front of you all to think about for 30 days, which is sort of.
I actually am not comfortable redrafting this in this session right now. I'd rather, if it's acceptable to everybody, have this minuted and repeat it again in our minutes and discussion in April when we adopt it, or if it's adopted.
I mean, one point is that actually when I drafted that, one of the things I pointed out is that that language is not about the reason for your doing this is not legally required at all. This is an internal decision by the board for how often and when and where you want to have your meetings in order to perform your function. As long as you meet the minimum threshold in the statute, and it's a very low bar, your bylaws can set forth your regular meeting schedule as you wish, and it's not a requirement that you explain yourselves, because it is entirely to serve you.
But I do think, Abigail, Grace raises a good point, which is 10 years from now,
Right.
when you look through all, I mean, we have the First Amendment in 2013 and 2013. It's helpful to set the context.
And that is why I included this. So,
So,
you know.
are you comfortable if we can do this with our minutes today, from today's meeting, as well as our recorded minute, when there is.
Whatever the process.
Whatever the process. Is that all right?
and but it can be incorporated in this 30 days or not.
We'd have to do this today
It's a
by
great-
rewriting it right now.
It's a gray area. I would only be comfortable even if we didn't have a piece of paper. So this draft has been presented to you and your bylaws say you cannot vote to approve it until 30 days has passed.
So we're
following
gonna delay it a
present
month.
It could potentially.
You're
delay
asking
it.
us, what you're asking us to do is not have something for April's meeting, and now have it in May's.
Because then whatever changes you were to make today, this or any others, any board member would like to incorporate that you all agree upon, would then be made, and then that draft would then be presented to you in April, and then you would vote on it in May.
So we're setting this back by a month to get this.
Well, that's what you're asking us to do. I'm not sure we're comfortable with that.
So
Grace,
what you're not
I-
comfortable with is whether or not we need to go into that. And
Let me be
if we just
specific.
put it in a minute.
Let me be specific. Grace, your concern is that the rationale is missing one thing on efficiency as currently written out in the amendment. I think by minuting it, we talked about it, it's in our minutes from last month. By minuting it today, and by discussing it in April, when after the 30-day comment on what's currently written gets voted on, assuming that there are any negative comments that need us to delay the vote. That I personally feel that's sufficient. Because that can be a part of this. What you're asking us to do, if we amend this, is to wait until the April meeting to have the new draft of the resolution and have 30-day comments starting in April, ending in May. So I'm not comfortable postponing this, but I'm happy to have everybody send.
I like the record in one place. But I will acquiesce to whatever
Well,
that the
it's
board
just-
would like to do.
you
I
and I-
will accept if
You,
that's.
you and I are just having one conversation, but I haven't. brought the
Yes,
rest of the
so
board
let's
in.
hear what.
Sean,
I have a concern. In this document or anything else, to make a distinction between what a voucher is and what a. I'm concerned that pending business, it could be into the voucher. So you've got to be aware. So does that definition lead to the correct? Somewhere.
Similar to how the county has evolved their voucher meeting into being a much bigger entity.
Yeah.
so are you suggesting that we, in our bylaws, and monthly voucher meetings that are specified, that are just for voucher?
I mean, I feel like we as a group have the discipline.
Right, you don't know what's happening down the road.
But, yeah, I don't know if it's even an issue, but it's enough of a concern that I.
So what I had originally thought might happen is when you adopted, if you adopted this change with this language, and then come July, have the first meeting where you adopt your upcoming schedule for a fiscal year. I anticipated you setting a schedule where you actually would do something very similar to what the county does. When, if you looked, I should have brought it up, sorry, I didn't. If you look at the county schedule they adopt each year, it says the date and regular meeting, voucher meeting. And actually the voucher meetings, I forget, one's in red, I think the regular are in black and the voucher meetings are in red. And I thought that might be something that you folks might want to do. The question of whether or not you should require that in your bylaws to bind the board, it's not a bad idea, but it's also, the practical matter is your obligation as a board is to oversee the finances, and the bills can't get paid unless you approve them in a meeting. If you're not having those meetings, then the bills aren't going to be paid and you're not doing your job. So it's sort of belts and suspenders. It's not a bad idea to put something to that effect in the bylaws. I generally try and keep bylaws broad and not get too specific, because otherwise, in order to make a change and for the flexibility that this was done to achieve, you lose it if you put too much detail in the bylaws, because then you can't make a change without changing your bylaws that have to sit currently for an amendment for 30 days. So where the resolution is much more nimble, right? You can, I mean, if you were to adopt a calendar for fiscal year in July and then decide in December you wanted to change it, you could do it right away without having to have that 30 days.
So may I make a suggestion to the board? I'm gonna completely change my mind, because I think you're bringing up a good point. And I actually think our bylaw should specify voucher meetings, 12 a year, once a month. And I
And
think
then
that's
we
a
can
really good
incorporate
discipline.
additional language in the.
I think it's a really good discipline, because I'm not worried about this constitution of our board. But again, I think we've got to, and again, we can't bind our future board, but our bylaws can. And this is their primary responsibility. So Grace, with all due respect, I'm going to change my mind and allow you to, I'm going to ask you to work with Abigail in the next couple of days, if we can, or within the next week, to get a revision for us to discuss at our April board meeting for opening a public comment for 30 days following.
And also with
With
Sean.
this, with Sean as well.
And
But I mean, the bylaw, and if anybody else, Dale or Nina, has anything to add to the bylaw discussion. And in amendments, I'm gonna ask that we get them to Abigail in the next couple of days so we can have them on April's meeting.
The second part that I have for that is simple, maybe not in this document. I mean, part of the motivation of this is to reduce KIP's work, but do we want to codify somewhere that we only need a quarterly director's report 6 times a year? We need to explicitly say that. We say only in those.
That's what we
I
decided
I
once
think,
a year.
I think that's what we decide. And I actually think that's more of, that's been practice and it's not codified anywhere. And I think it's really up to,
I think that's an expectation the board sets.
that's with his performance. And I think that's something that would be part of his performance.
Again, I mean, I feel like that we don't get it.
I'd rather.
Four pages of bylaws. Keep it at 4 pages.
Does anybody have any other comments before we move forward? Okay, thank you. Capital Reserve Fund resolution is before you. I will move to pass the Teton County Library Reserve Fund resolutions effective March 17th as presented. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Board update, strategic planning subcommittee.
Already.
I think we've already covered that unless somebody has something else to add.
I guess we're sort of assuming that you're going to take off with what you've already done with the team.
Yes.
So as part of that process, did you go through the expertise required and decide that team based on expertise required, like the workbook
Yes.
asked you to?
Yes, and I discussed the makeup of the committee yesterday. Brian thinks it's a really good position.
We'd like to see that, I think.
Sure. I don't have it with me today, but I
Right.
can send it to you.
Yeah.
And how are you on, we have one member identified as a
I
blank to be filled.
I am waiting for them to get back to me. The initial discussion. And there's interest. So I don't have a confirmation yet. And part of it is wanting to know what direction we're going to go from today with the process. So
And we have our first meeting on April 5th. We will report back with much more to the board in April.
I can, yes, and I can try and rattle off the names for you today if you'd like me to just go.
Yeah, and you did the expertise. I'd be interested in what expertise went with them.
I would like that to be done between our committee.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
That's fine.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. Yeah,
I mean, it's something that we don't need to
absolutely.
involve. Diversity Subcommittee update, Dale.
Yes, I know Kip mentioned that we had completed a training and I have looked for several others locally, which I haven't been that successful at. And I've encouraged everyone to take advantage of the state and national organizations. But I have come to feel that the way that this is a really complex thing to do. And the more I read about it, the more complex it gets. And I have come to believe that the best way to do this is not through a committee, but through the strategic plan. And that in order to really affect this sort of change, it has to be throughout the entire organization. And I actually believe our staff is ahead of the board in terms of the efforts they've made with our outreach in our programs and our materials and the collection and other things I'm sure that I'm not even aware of. So I think that this process is a good way to really try to move this forward for the board in order to take advantage of the expertise that the staff already has. And a strategic plan is also a learning process, as we've just heard all over again today from Brian. And I just think that is truly the way to go forward with this, to have it be a major part of our upcoming planning. I know the state library is putting some emphasis on this, that they also are working on it. So I think the timing in a way is probably perfect to try to move it forward in that manner. And I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion because, you know, my feeling about it is even in the community, people are pushed to keep up with the demand. I mean, I think it's something that a lot of organizations have realized they need to be more proactive about, and the people are scrambling to get the training and to have a local application, and all of that's going to take time. So I think to include it in our strategic plan is really the way to affect the most meaningful change.
Carol, I have a question for you. Is it your thinking then that that there is less of a need for the diversity subcommittee of the board to be active right now, and that we should be reactive to suggestions coming from Kip and his staff? Or is it something that you would like to continue to have as a board subcommittee and keeping your eyes and ears on everything that's going on? Because you've been a very good conduit for us. What's your preference right now?
You know, I'm certainly willing to help in any way that I possibly can, but I do believe that the planning effort is a better way to do it. I mean, me sitting up here every month and at some point starting to repeat myself because one, I'm either out of ideas, or two, I'm having difficulties finding local resources. I just think more brains are going to be better in this respect, and that we could do a better job. And of course, it's the board's responsibility to go forward with the strategic plan as much as it is the staff. So it would give us a real tool to move forward with. And it's been my understanding that that is going to be an emphasis in our strategic plan. So I think that's the way we should go. And I don't think I need to give this report every month. I think the time could be better spent in another way. And I'm volunteering to do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not abdicating here. I'm just saying that I think we need to rethink how we're doing it.
I like your suggestion, Dale. I think it's a process and a culture, not an event or two. And the strategic planning is where that will make it part of an integral part of the process. So I, for one, am supportive of that. And I just have a quick, so that's with respect to the culture in the community. Wasn't part of the charter for this diversity also diversity on the board? And are we satisfied with just leaving that, or is there something else we need to do, or can we just say we're?
I think it's involved both short-term, again, we all are well aware, and I was going to bring this up in other matters, but I'll do it now. We have 2 terms that are ending and potentially going to have people applying this year. And I think it behooves us all to keep this aspect of it in mind, and we have been actually talking to the, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. At the BOCC meeting, it's one of the things we talked about as well. So I'm comfortable that with this board as currently seated, we are very sensitive to this. And I think if it's done in our strategic planning process as well, that is probably a good living and breathing document to incorporate anybody who might come onto the board in the future.
So last year, we gave the county commissioners an input that said, here's what our current makeup of our board is, just so you remember what our expertise is, and here's where you might consider. And so putting it into that recommendation would be a perfect place to.
I find myself tasked willingly for that. That's fine. So since we don't have a vote scheduled at next April's meeting, we can vote to eliminate the diversity subcommittee. Because I presume it would be us doing this.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't use quite that language, Peter. I would say that we have, hopefully we can come up with something that says we have agreed to fold it into the strategic planning process, because I don't want to leave the impression that we've just kind of said, oh, okay, we're not going to do this right now, which might be the impression we leave. So I think we need to be careful about that language.
Absolutely, but we can't take that. We can't take any action on it today. We can take on the action on whatever that is next month.
I'll try to think about that and maybe send out a draft.
We had a vote because this was an established committee by vote of the board.
I could go back and look, but this is a regular meeting. And at a regular meeting, you can do any business that is regular. So
we
it was
agree.
a special meeting,
Okay.
and you have to stay within the confines of the agenda. So if it wasn't listed on the agenda that you were contemplating this action, you wouldn't be able to do that. But at a regular meeting, I believe, you know what? Go ahead and do it, and I'll double check, and if you have to do it again, do it again.
So Dale, could you repeat? Could you try and form a motion, please?
Can I,
Okay.
before, sorry to interrupt. I've been thinking about this a little bit in the sense of, and I don't know that this is the board's task. I would hate for things that could be simple changes to get dragged down in a strategic planning process. Not to say that that's a drag, but it does take a long time. So recently, having been in the library on Monday, sort of looking around, and I am an able-bodied person, and so it's not that, so I may not be as seeing the things I need to see, but our signs are all in letters and not particularly in Braille. Or are there things that we could do, and perhaps this is more a staff task, and so I hate to dump that on you, but are there things that we could do to make changes in the sort of physical presence of our building or our offerings that are more inclusive? So page to podium is a verbal thing when it's online. I've never done it online. Are there captions? Is that something that we can add? Things like that we don't think about on the regular because we don't need them. I just wonder if we could do some smaller changes like that instead of thinking, not to dismiss thinking larger, but sometimes the little things can really have an impact in change that sort of start the ball rolling.
I think you're right about that, although I don't think it's our job to strictly speaking, say we need to do this, this, and this. But I also believe that that's a really important part of an umbrella planning process to raise the awareness at every level in the organization, including the board, to have this in front of us when we make any changes at all, whether it's the furniture, the carpet, the bathrooms, right on up to the outreach, which is what we're basically talking about for the board and the library and what we've been talking about. So I mean, I think everything you've said is right, but I think our part is to keep the emphasis on how important it is through the planning, through discussion in the board meetings, through recruitment, through those things that the board can actually do.
I agree. And I mean, you know, it's easy for me to say all those things, and we have a staff that's understaffed and, you know, recruiting constantly. So not to add to the burden, I just wonder as we move along to not forget to emphasize making those changes in any way that we can. And even this Zoom is not captioned right now. So that's an, you know, that's a impediment to someone being able to participate at a higher level. So these are things that I am coming along to slowly, and embarrassed to say that you don't think about them more. So just putting it out there.
From a structural perspective, my sense is that as a rule, the fewer subcommittees of the board, the better, because we benefit from having the five of us hear everything at all times. When there's specific tasks to be done that take research and investigation, that's where we have tended to appoint committees with the idea that that's not an ongoing thing, it's a task-oriented thing. And when we were chartering this group of Dale and me, it was to specifically look at training that our board could go through. That was out there because we identified this is a gap that we needed to meet. So I would just remind everybody that that was a discussion about forming these various committees. And that's why we wrote a charter. So I actually, in the interest of today's time, would like to defer dissolving, amending, changing the diversity subcommittee until the April meeting, please. But this has been, I think, a very good discussion. Thank you. Housing Task Force update. There was a report included. Is there anything that anybody either has questions about or has further comments or updates on?
I like the direction it's going.
I was just saying, I think we found the right direction right now at our last meeting. And, I think we have some good.
Any further Housing Task Force? BOC quarterly meeting. It was either I'm writing well, I don't think that's it, or they have bigger business, but it was a very brief session once we were on their agenda. And I think they have a very good understanding of what we're doing. And we emphasize again that, as I think most of you were on that call, that we want to help them in their going through the application process, considering applicants. When that happens, I reached out to Mark Barron again. I do believe it's a June timeframe right now in their mind for opening up applications for consideration. For a meeting that they will appoint at the end of June. So they're going to do it fairly quickly. The tri-board 4 days before the 4th. Yeah, exactly. The tri-board quarterly meeting, Sean joined me as well. I think this is a very good forum for the three organizations, Friends Foundation and we, to continue to discuss informally priorities and what's going on with all the organizations. I asked Diana to think about if there are ways that they would like to see this amended at all. But so far it seems to be pretty well. We are hosting the next tri-board meeting here, which is in June, I believe. Seems like it's. And, okay, any questions about? What? I don't have any matters from board members, library staff, and supporting organizations, but I ask anybody to raise their hand if they have something. Any other matters? Payment of library vouchers.
I have reviewed voucher assignment and would move that
I will second that motion. And any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I would make a motion to, well, I would like to say again, thank you to KIP staff and thank you board for a lot of work and a lot of meetings this last month. We had at least 4 between the special meetings and the regular meetings, the BOCC and the tri-board. So thank you very much. I will then take a motion from anybody to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn today's meeting.
I will second that. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Just before 10 o'clock, how about that?